Every parent has a secret fear that keeps them up at night, the kind of fear that creeps into your bones. I never thought mine would come crashing down on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. It was the day my daughter's laughter was silenced, and the HOA president's son stood over her with a metal bat like he owned the whole world. And his excuse? That she was clumsy, that she had tripped all on her own. He thought that was enough to explain why my little girl was face down on the gravel, bruised and crying. My temper nearly broke in two, but my wife's did not, because when they realized who she was, everything changed. Let me rewind. Tuesdays are supposed to be dull, the kind of day that shows up, does its duty, and goes home without causing trouble. No drama, no surprises, just beige. But this Tuesday? It came dressed in red and carried dynamite, and it lit the fuse with the sound of my daughter's laughter. Lily's laugh is the rhythm of my life, the background song that tells me all is right. She was only 8, with scraped knees and pigtails, walking home from her best friend's house just 2 doors down. Our neighborhood was supposed to be safe. Perfect lawns, strict HOA rules, fees that bought us peace and sameness. At least, that's what I thought we were paying for. I was in the garage wrestling with a lawnmower that sounded like a dying goose when the laughter stopped. It didn't fade, it was cut off. A switch had been flipped. The silence that followed felt heavy, unnatural, like the air itself knew something was wrong. From the kitchen, my wife Sam heard it too. She has a way of moving that I'll never match. Former Army, sharp, efficient, precise. She doesn't rush. She arrives. By the time I tossed my wrench aside and reached the driveway, she was already halfway down the gravel road, long strides eating up the distance. Then I saw it. The picture that branded itself into my mind. Lily on the ground, a small bundle of pink t-shirt and denim shorts, and around her, 4 boys in varsity jackets sneering down like a pack of wolves. The biggest one, Tyler Lawson, held a metal bat like it was part of him. He slammed it into the gravel, inches from her head, pebbles bouncing like sparks. He didn't touch her, but he didn't need to. His message was clear. Sam's pace never broke. Her jaw set. Her posture screamed combat discipline. She looked like a soldier closing on an enemy target. The boys finally noticed her. Their smirks cracked. Tyler still tried to look brave, lifting the bat chest high over my daughter as if daring the world to stop him. My chest burned, my legs heavy like cement as I tried to run, but Sam was already there. Her voice sliced the air, flat and sharp as glass. Get away from her, not a plea. Not a warning. A command. The boys flinched, their bravado faltering. 2 of them shifted back. Tyler's friends whispered urgently, one hissing, "Text your mom." His thumbs flew, and soon a white SUV appeared in the distance. Tyler puffed his chest, muttering, "We were just playing, lady." Sam didn't even blink. "You're done playing," she said, stopping just a few feet away. Her eyes locked on his. "Drop the bat," defiance flickered in Tyler's stare. He glanced at his friends, but they were already backing off. Sam's stance shifted, steady, shoulders squared. There was no bluff in her. She was the wall between him and my daughter. Consequences hung heavy in the air, the kind no teenager wanted to test. Tyler's grip loosened. The bat clattered onto the gravel. I finally reached them, breath ragged, fury boiling. But Sam was already kneeling at Lily's side, her hands steady, her voice soft and low, checking every scrape with careful gentleness. Lily's sobs broke me. I looked at Tyler. He couldn't even meet my eyes anymore. Just a foolish boy who had made a mistake too big to erase. But then the white SUV rolled up. Spotless. Expensive. The kind of car that screams importance. Out stepped Karen Lawson, the HOA president. Perfect blonde hair, polished smile with no warmth behind it. She looked over the scene like she was checking for weeds in her yard. "No alarm, no concern, only annoyance. Tyler, what's going on here?" she asked, voice smooth, rehearsed. Tyler muttered something about Lily falling, about an accident. Karen's smile tightened. She glanced at the bat lying in the gravel but ignored it as if it didn't exist. "I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. Boys will be boys." Sam rose slowly, her eyes like steel. "Your boy stood over my daughter with a bat after knocking her to the ground. There is no misunderstanding." Karen's mask slipped. Her polite smile vanished, replaced by something cold and sharp. "I think you're mistaken. My son would never do such a thing. Perhaps your daughter is clumsy." Her hand gripped Tyler's shoulder, pulling him protectively toward her as she began spinning her version of the story, brick by brick, shielding him from blame. I looked at her smug face, then at my daughter clutching Sam's leg, cheeks scraped raw. The rules I thought we all lived by, protect children, take responsibility, meant nothing here. Karen Lawson played by her own rules, and right there, she drew a line in the gravel between her son and my daughter. She didn't know my wife specialized in crossing enemy lines. and she didn't know I'd be the one carrying the map, the lunch, and the record of every step. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a long, ugly chapter. And we were about to write it together. We brought Lily home. Outside, the world felt distant, muffled. Inside, everything revolved around her. Sam cleaned her scrapes with the same precision she once used on the battlefield. Then covered the worst cut with a unicorn bandage Lily picked herself. It was a tiny piece of control in a moment she had lost everything. I made hot chocolate, piled with marshmallows. The oldest dad medicine in the book. Wrapped in her fuzzy blanket, Lily told us the whole story. Her voice wavered but pushed through. She had been walking, humming a tune from her favorite movie, when Tyler and his friends blocked the path. They tossed the bat between them like a toy. She tried to pass, but Tyler stepped in front. He mocked her shoes, bright pink and cheerful. She told him to leave her alone. He laughed. Then he swung the bat, not at her, but close enough to make her flinch. He told her the road was for varsity players, not little kids. Then he jabbed the bat into her ribs. Not hard, but hard enough to throw her off balance. On the loose gravel, that was all it took. She stumbled, fell, and her head struck the ground with a sharp crack. Tyler stood over her, bat tight in his grip, as if considering another swing while she blinked through pain. The scrape on her cheek wasn't from the fall. It was from one of the other boys who kicked a little spray of gravel in her face as she tried to get up. They were laughing when Sam arrived. Listening to her story was like swallowing broken glass. Every word was a sharp edge in my throat. The casual, thoughtless cruelty of it was staggering. It wasn't a simple accident, it was bullying. It was a power trip executed by a pack of boys who felt entitled to the very ground she walked in. Sam listened without interrupting, her face a mask of calm, but I could see the muscle ticking in her jaw. When Lily was done, Sam just hugged her. "You were very brave," she whispered. "You did nothing wrong." The next morning, we were in the principal's office. The school nurse had called us. Lily had mentioned the incident to her teacher, and protocol had to be followed. The nurse's report was clinical, detached, abrasions consistent with a fall on a gravel surface, student reports being pushed by another student. It was factual. It was useless. So, we drove to urgent care, concussion protocol, abrasions documented. The principal, a man named Mr. Henderson, with a perpetually worried expression and a tie that was always slightly askew, wrung his hands. He looked like a man who desperately wanted to be anywhere else. "We take these matters very seriously," he said, the words sounding hollow and rehearsed. He had a file open on his desk, Lily's file, and another one next to it. Tyler Lawson's, I could see the name clipped to the top. "So, what happens now?" I asked. "You'll pull the bus loop and ease-lot cameras, right?" Henderson cleared his throat. "Well, it's a complicated situation. It's one student's word against 4 others. 4 others who were standing over my daughter with a baseball bat?" Sam added, her voice level. "Yes, well, the bat," Henderson stammered. "Tyler is on the baseball team. He often carries his equipment with him. He was already making excuses. He was already building an off-ramp for the Lawson boy." And then, as if on cue, the office door opened. Karen Lawson swept in. She wasn't invited. She hadn't been called, she just appeared. A vision in a tailored pantsuit, carrying a designer handbag that could probably fund the school's entire arts program for a year. She smiled graciously at Mr. Henderson, a smile that didn't reach her cold, calculating eyes. "Mr. Henderson, so sorry to interrupt," she began, her voice as smooth as silk. "I heard there was a little misunderstanding about my Tyler yesterday, and I wanted to clear there." She turned her gaze on me and Sam. "And I wanted to apologize if your daughter was frightened. She's a very sensitive girl, isn't she?" The implication was clear. Lily was weak. Lily was a liar. She proceeded to dismantle our reality with terrifying precision. She produced written statements from Tyler's 3 friends. All typed, all signed, all telling the exact same story. They were practicing swings. Lily ran between them unexpectedly. She tripped over her own feet. They were all very concerned for her well-being. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. A work of fiction so complete, so internally consistent. It was almost believable if you hadn't seen the look on those boys' faces. If you hadn't heard the story from your own child? Furthermore, Karen continued, turning back to the principal, "My husband and I are the primary sponsors for the new scoreboard on the football field. We believe in supporting our school's athletic programs. And as PTA chair, I help lead every major fundraiser, programs that teach boys discipline and character." She let the words hang in the air. It wasn't a statement, it was a threat, a reminder of her power, her influence, her financial leverage. "Don't mess with my son or the funding for your precious scoreboard might just dry up." Mr. Henderson wilted. I could practically see his spine dissolve. He nodded, his eyes fixed on the grain of his desk. Yes, Mrs. Lawson, we appreciate your family's generosity. He closed the files. The case was closed before it had ever truly been opened. Henderson's glance at the plaque on the wall donated by the Lawson family said it all. Karen owned the scoreboard, the meetings, and him. He looked at us, a hint of apology in his tired eyes. District policy requires 2 staff witnesses before discipline, Henderson murmured, eyes on the Lawson plaque. Given the conflicting accounts, he said. The corporate jargon a shield against responsibility. There's not much more the school can do. We'll consider the matter resolved. Resolved. My 8-year-old daughter was assaulted, and the matter was resolved. Karen Lawson gave us a final triumphant smirk. I'm so glad we could all be reasonable about this, she said. She turned and walked out, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. The sound of victory. We sat there for a moment in stunned silence. The system, the one that was supposed to protect kids, had been bought and paid for. It had been manipulated by a woman who would burn the whole world down to make sure her son never had to face the consequences of his actions. We left the principal's office knowing one thing for sure. The school wasn't going to help. The police would call it a he said, she said civil matter. Especially with 4 witnesses backing Tyler's story. We were on our own in the first shots from Karen's HOA cannon. The next phase of her campaign to silence and intimidate us were about to land right on our doorstep. The first letter arrived 2 days later. It was crisp, official, tucked into our mailbox like a little paper viper. The letterhead was embossed with the logo of our neighborhood, the estates at Serene Lake. There was nothing serene about it. It was a declaration of war printed on expensive cream-colored cardstock. The subject line read, Notice of Violation and Imposed Fine. According to the letter signed with a flourish by one Karen Lawson, President, we were in breach of Covenant 4.7b. Lawn Maintenance and Aesthetic Standards. Our grass apparently was A4 of an inch too high. A4 of an inch. I went outside and stared at my lawn. It looked fine. It looked like every other lawn on the block. But attached to the notice was a photograph. A close-up shot of a single blade of grass next to a ruler. The blade clearly exceeded the 3 in maximum height mandated by the HOA bylaws. A document thicker than most dictionaries and twice as boring. The photo was ridiculous. The angle was solo. The photographer must have been lying on their stomach. It was petty. It was targeted. It was a $100 fine. Sam looked at it over my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just took the letter, went to her desk, and opened a new folder on her computer. She labeled it HOA. Then she went into the garage, got a tape measure, and spent the next 10 minutes meticulously measuring our lawn in 10 different spots. She took pictures. The average height was 2.8 in. She saved the photos to the folder. Documentation, she said. Always start with documentation. That was just the beginning. The blitz had started. A new letter arrived every other day. We received a fine for our garden hose being visibly coiled in a non-uniform manner. The accompanying photo looked like a crime scene investigation of a very uninteresting snake, plus 2 more photos grasping at nothing. My personal favorite was the violation for unapproved landscape ornamentation. The ornament in question, a small ceramic gnome Lily had painted in art class. It was tucked away behind a rose bush. Someone had to have physically walked onto our property and peered into our garden bed to even see it. The fine was $50. I wanted to pay it in pennies. Sam just took a picture of the gnome, printed a copy of the HOA rulebook section on decorations, which was conveniently vague, and added it to the file. The letters were designed to needle us, to wear us down. A war of 1,000 paper cuts. Karen Lawson was using the full bureaucratic weight of the HOA as her personal weapon. She was turning our quiet suburban dream into a Kafka-esque nightmare. Every trip to the mailbox was filled with a low-grade dread. What fresh nonsense would we find today? What imaginary infraction had we committed in our sleep? It was harassment, pure and simple. We paid the fines, but we sent them with registered letters disputing the claims and including our own photographic evidence. We knew it wouldn't matter to Karen, but it created a paper trail. Sam was building a case, piece by methodical piece. She read the HOA bylaws from cover to cover, highlighting sections, making notes. She was treating it like an enemy combatant's field manual, learning their rules of engagement so she could use them against them. The financial sting was annoying, but manageable. The real damage was the feeling of being watched, of being constantly judged by a hostile, unseen eye. We started to feel like prisoners in our own home. I'd find myself glancing out the windows, checking the street for Karen's white SUV. We were living under a petty dictatorship, and the dictator lived just 3 houses down. Most of our neighbors kept their heads down. They'd give us sympathetic looks, a sad little wave, but no one wanted to get caught in the crossfire. They had their own lawns to worry about. They knew how Karen operated. She ruled through intimidation and the selective enforcement of 1,000 meaningless rules. Cross her and you'd soon find yourself fined for the color of your welcome mat, or the alignment of your window shutters. The campaign of nuisance fines continued for 3 weeks. It was a constant low-level stress. We were drowning in paper. And then one night, the nature of the attack changed. It escalated. The paper cuts were annoying, a sign of her pettiness and her willingness to abuse her power. But then Karen sent her foot soldiers, her own little private security force, to our house after dark. She escalated from petty mail and bogus photos to a direct physical threat on our own front porch. The game had changed, and she had no idea how prepared we were to play. It was just after 11 on a Wednesday night. The house was quiet. Lily was asleep upstairs, dreaming of unicorns and playgrounds, blissfully unaware of the silent war being waged downstairs. I was reading in the living room, and Sam was at the kitchen table reviewing satellite images of our property line on her laptop. It sounds insane, I know, but that's Sam. When she feels a threat, she prepares a battle space. She had already mapped out every blind spot, every potential approach to our house. To her, this was just a problem set, a mission with clearly defined objectives. The first sign of trouble was a flicker. The motion-activated floodlight over our garage snapped on, bathing the driveway in harsh white light. I looked up from my book. Sam was already on her feet, moving silently to the front window, peering through a crack in the blinds. I joined her. A dark, unmarked van was parked across the street. Not a commercial van, more like a conversion van from the 90s. The kind with no windows in the back. The kind you see in movies right before something bad happens. 2 men got out. They were big. Not bodybuilder big, but thick, soft big. They wore dark jackets with a small, generic-looking security logo embroidered on the chest. They looked less like professional security, and more like bouncers from a rundown nightclub. They walked up our driveway with a purpose. One of them was carrying a clipboard, a flimsy prop in the dead of night. The other was carrying a small canvas bag. My stomach tightened. This was different. This wasn't a letter in the mail. This was a physical presence, an invasion. "Who the hell are they?" I whispered. "Compliance officers," some said, her voice a low murmur. She didn't sound scared. She sounded interested. She'd already pulled up her phone, which was linked to the doorbell camera she'd installed the week before. We had a crystal-clear high-definition view of our front porch. The 2 men stepped onto the porch. They didn't ring the bell. They didn't knock. They just stood there for a moment, their eyes scanning the front of the house. The one with the bag knelt, his back to the camera, and started fiddling with something near our potted plant. Plant and frame, not protect and serve. He was trying to be subtle, but there's nothing subtle about a 250 lb man in a cheap jacket trying to hide something on your porch at midnight. "He's planting something," I said, the realization dawning on me. "A plastic bag of white granules, unknown. We never touched it. The camera saw everything. Obviously staged, something they could discover tomorrow during an inspection and call the cops on us. It was a classic escalation tactic. Discredit the target, make them look like criminals." Sam just nodded. She tapped a button on her phone. "Showtime," she whispered. Suddenly the front porch was blasted with light. Sam had wired the porch lights to a separate remote-controlled switch. They were brighter than the standard bulbs designed to wash out shadows and faces. The 2 men froze, caught like deer in the headlights. They squinted, raising their hands to shield their eyes. Then Sam's voice crackled through the doorbell speaker. It wasn't her normal voice. It was amplified, metallic, and utterly devoid of emotion. "You are on private property. You are being recorded by multiple high-resolution cameras. State your names and your purpose." The 2 goons were completely thrown. They looked at each other confused. The one with the clipboard finally spoke, his voice shaky. We're from the HOA Compliance Division. We're investigating a report. There is no compliance division that operates at this hour. Per 2.3d, HOA inspections occur during daylight hours only." Sam's voice boomed from the speaker. "The object you have placed behind the planter has been recorded. The license plate of your vehicle has been recorded. The local police department has been notified of a potential trespassing and criminal mischief incident in progress at this address. You have 10 seconds to vacate the premises before a formal complaint is filed." It was a bluff, but a beautiful one. She hadn't called the cops. Not yet. She didn't need to. The effect was instantaneous. Panic set in. The man who had planted the bag snatched it back up. They practically fell over each other, scrambling off the porch. They didn't walk back to their van. They ran. We watched them go. The street fell silent again. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My heart was pounding. That was I started, but I couldn't find the right word. Predictable. Sam finished for me. She was already back at her laptop saving the video file from the doorbell camera. She pulled up another window, which showed footage from a new camera she'd hidden in the bushes, giving a perfect view of their van and its license plate. She typed the plate number into a search engine. "They made a mistake," she said, a small grim smile on her face. They thought we were civilians. The men were amateurs. The van was registered to Ashel Corporation that after a few minutes of digging, Sam linked to a landscaping company that held the exclusive and wildly overpriced contract for the neighborhood's common areas. A contract awarded by Karen Lawson. It was all connected. This wasn't just a personal vendetta anymore. This was a conspiracy. A cheap, poorly executed one, but a conspiracy nonetheless. There in the second the lights hit. But we knew this was a new phase. Karen was no longer content with trying to find use into submission. She was willing to break the law, to frame us, to do whatever it took to win. But she had just shown her hand. She had revealed her tactics. And for a woman like Sam, that was a fatal error. Sam just smiled, looking at the screen full of video files. "They're predictable," she said again. "Time to build the digital fence." The night the goons came to our porch was a turning point. For Karen, it was an escalation. For Sam, it was a gift. It was a data point. It confirmed her hypothesis. Our opponent was clumsy, arrogant, and operating with a false sense of security. The next morning, Sam didn't seem angry. She seemed energized. She had a project. She went into what I call her mission mode. The kitchen table became a command center. Laptops, tablets, and spools of wiring appeared. Coffee was brewed in industrial quantities. "A passive defense isn't enough," she declared, pointing at a schematic of our house she'd drawn on a whiteboard. "We need active collection. We need to control the information space." I just nodded and made sure the coffee pot was full. When Sam talks like that, my job is to provide logistical support and stay out of the way. The digital fence she envisioned was a work of art. It was a multi-layered surveillance network that would have made a spy agency proud. The doorbell camera was just the beginning, a simple sentry post. Now she was fortifying the entire perimeter. She ordered 4 more high-definition night vision-capable cameras. She didn't mount them in obvious places under the eaves. That's what amateurs do. Instead, she concealed them. One was disguised as a birdhouse. Another was tucked into the dense foliage of a holly bush. A third was mounted inside the garage with a tiny pinhole view of the entire street. The fourth was a dash camera hardwired into her car, which was always parked facing the Lawson house. It recorded 24/7 on a continuous loop. But the crown jewel of her setup was the drone. It was a small, quiet, consumer-grade quadcopter, the kind people use to take vacation videos. But in Sam's hands, it became a strategic reconnaissance asset. Every morning, just after dawn, she'd launch it from our backyard. It would climb to 400 ft, the legal ceiling, and perform a slow, sweeping orbit of the neighborhood. From that altitude, it was nearly invisible and silent. We filmed streets and common areas only under 400 ft. No backyard peeking video only. No audio recording, but its 4K camera could zoom in with astonishing clarity. She wasn't spying on our neighbors. She was documenting the patterns of the HOA's contracted services, the lawn care company, the compliance officers, and of course, the movements of Karen Lawson herself. My role in all of this was data management. Every day, Sam would download hours of footage. It was my job to watch it, log it, and tag anything of interest. It was the most boring and the most fascinating thing I'd ever done. I watched hours of uneventful suburban life. People walking their dogs, kids riding bikes, the mailman making his rounds. But in between the mundane, there were gems. By noon, we had timestamps, plates, faces clean. We captured footage of the lawn care company, the one owned by Karen's brother-in-law, spending a grand total of 15 minutes maintaining the vast common area at the neighborhood entrance, a job for which the HOA was built thousands of dollars a month. We captured Karen's compliance officers, the same 2 goons from our porch driving around the neighborhood, taking pictures of some houses while completely ignoring identical violations at the homes of her friends on the board. We had video of one of them deliberately knocking over a resident's trash can to photograph the resulting litter. Sam pieced it all together into a stunning montage of corruption and petty tyranny. She created timelines. She cross-referenced the video footage with the violation notices we were still receiving. Here was a video of our lawn being mowed on Tuesday. Here was the violation notice we received on Wednesday, complete with the bogus photo of the single blade of grass claiming it was too high. The evidence was irrefutable. She created a case file that was meticulous, organized, and absolutely damning. The centerpiece of the presentation was the footage from the night of the porch incident. She edited it together from 3 different angles. The doorbell cam with its clear audio of the entire exchange. The hidden bush cam which captured them arriving and fleeing, and got a perfect shot of the license plate. And the dash cam from her car across the street which showed the whole scene from a distance, establishing their presence and their hurried departure. It was a story told in pixels and timestamps, and it left no room for doubt. Every clip carried visible clocks, date stamps, and continuous angles. She even created a section for what she called pattern of life. Using the drone footage and the street-facing cameras, she mapped Karen's daily routine. When she left, when she came home, who visited her. It felt a little creepy, I'll admit. But as Sam explained it, you don't just learn about your enemy. You learn their habits, you learn their blind spots, you learn what they value and who they trust. The file grew every single day. It was a living document, a beautiful, damning collection of digital proof that painted a clear picture of abuse of power, harassment, and very likely criminal conspiracy and fraud. Sam had built a digital prison for Karen Lawson, and Karen had no idea she was already inside it. The evidence was overwhelming, but evidence is only useful if you have someone to show it to. A judge, a jury, or in our case, a neighborhood that was scared into silence. We had the what, we had the how. Now we needed the who. We needed alleys, and it was time to go recruiting. Building a case in isolation is one thing. Building a movement is another. We had a mountain of digital evidence, a fortress of facts. But we were still just one family against a corrupt system, however small and petty that system might be. To take on Karen Lawson and the machine she controlled, we needed people. We needed our neighbors to stop looking away and start looking at the problem with us. Sam had built the armory. Now I had to go find the soldiers. Our first stop was Bill's house right next door. Bill was a retired Marine, a Vietnam vet who spent most of his days in his garden or his workshop. He was quiet, gruff, and had a handshake that could crush a coconut. He'd seen the whole thing with Lily from his front window. He'd given us a grim knowing nod that day, but hadn't said a word. I figured he was the perfect place to start. He understood chain of command, and he hated bullies. I found him in his garage, sharpening a set of chisels. The place smelled of sawdust and old coffee. I didn't beat around the bush. I laid it all out. The incident with Lily, the pressure at the school, the flood of bogus fines, the late-night visit from the fake compliance officers. I told him we weren't just angry. We were building a case. Bill listened patiently, not saying a word. His eyes focused on the wet stone in front of him. When I was finished, he wiped the chisel clean on a soft cloth and inspected the edge. Karen Lawson, he said, his voice a low rumble. She's a piece of work. Been running this place like her own private thief for years. He told me about the time he'd been fined $200 because the American flag he flew from his porch was, according to Karen, 1 and 2 wide for the approved pole diameter. He fought it. He lost. He'd seen her target other families, too. Anyone who questioned her authority. Anyone who voted against her proposals at the HOA meetings. She's got a little crew on the board, he explained. They all vote together. They approve her contracts. They back her plays. Most folks are too scared or too busy to fight back. They just pay the fine and hope she moves on to someone else. We're not going to pay and hope, I said. We're going to fight, but we need help. We need people who are willing to stand up. He looked at me, his gaze steady. What do you need for now? Just to know you're with us. To be a witness if we need one. To talk to other people you trust. Bill nodded slowly. You got it, he said. She picked a fight with the wrong family. He looked over at my house. Your wife, she's Army, right? I can tell she's got that look. The calm kind of dangerous. It was the highest compliment Bill could give. We had our first ally. Our next visit was to Claire, who lived across the street. Claire was a 5th grade teacher at the local elementary school. She was younger, maybe in her early 30s, and she had 2 kids of her own. We knew she was a good person, the kind who organized the neighborhood block party every summer. We also knew she was terrified of confrontation. We met her as she was getting her mail. We told her the same story, focusing on what happened at the school with the principal folding under Karen's pressure. That part hit her hard. As a teacher, she believed in the system. She believed in protecting kids. Hearing how it had been so easily corrupted visibly angered her. I'm not surprised, she said, her voice tight with frustration. Karen Lawson is the head of the PTA, too. Her influence is everywhere. She gets whatever she wants. New equipment for the sports teams her son is on, while the arts and music programs get their budget slashed. Everyone's afraid to cross her. She told us about other parents who had run afoul of Karen. People who had questioned her decisions and found their kids suddenly benched from a team, or overlooked for an academic award. It was a pattern of vindictive, manipulative behavior that extended far beyond the HOA. I want to help, Claire said, her fear battling with her conscience. But I'm worried about my job, about my kids. We're not asking you to storm the castle, Sam told her gently. We're just asking for information. You know the people here. You know the kids. You know who else has been pushed around by her? We just need to know we're not alone. That was something Claire could do. She could talk to people quietly. She could gauge the mood of the community. She became our intelligence officer, our ear to the ground. Within a few days, she came back to us with a list of 3 other families who had been systematically harassed by Karen with fines and threats. An elderly couple who were cited for their bird feeder. A young family who were told their children's playset was an unapproved structure. They were all angry, but they were all afraid to speak up alone. Suddenly, we weren't just a single household fighting back. We were a network, a small secret resistance movement brewing in the heart of suburbia. Bill was our grizzled veteran, our moral anchor. Claire was our communications hub, our link to the wider community. And Sam and I were the command center, processing the intelligence and planning the next move. We had a small army now. Bill had the ground truth from years of observation. Claire had the institutional knowledge of the school and the social networks of the neighborhood. Sam had the tech, the strategy, and the mountain of evidence. All we needed now was the final undeniable piece of the puzzle. The smoking gun that would incriminate not just the system, but the individuals. And thanks to his own bottomless arrogance, Karen Lawson's own son was about to hand it to us on a silver platter. The key to any successful operation is good intelligence. Our little band of suburban rebels had established a solid network. Bill knew the history, Claire knew the people, and Sam had the electronic eyes and ears. The weak point in Karen's fortress was without a doubt her son. Tyler was arrogant, impulsive, and like most teenagers, he lived his life online. Week knew he was bragging about what he did. We just had to prove it. Claire was our way in. As a teacher, she understood the social dynamics of the kids in our town. She knew that the varsity athlete crowd ran on gossip and bravado. They have a group chat, she told us during a quiet meeting in our kitchen. It's on a messaging app. They call it the dugout. It's where they talk trash, share memes, and boast about their conquests, both on and off the field. Getting access to the chat was the challenge. None of us could just ask to be invited. We needed someone on the inside. We went back through the names of the 3 other boys who were with Tyler that day, sampled up their school photos from the district website. We looked at their family homes on Google Maps. We did our homework. One of the boys, a kid named Michael, seemed like the most likely candidate for a guilty conscience. His family lived in a more modest house than the others. Claire mentioned that his mom was a nurse who worked long hours. He wasn't from the same wealthy, untouchable clique as Tyler. He was a follower. The plan was delicate. We couldn't approach Michael directly. That would spook him, and he'd run straight to Tyler. We had to use a cutout. Claire had a former student, a smart, trustworthy high school girl named Sarah, who knew Michael. She was a good kid who hated bullies. Claire spoke to Sarah's parents first, explaining the situation without being overly dramatic. They were disgusted by what had happened to Lily, and gave their permission for Sarah to help as long as she was safe. The sting was simple. Sarah approached Michael at school, not in an accusatory way, but as a concerned friend. She told him she'd heard rumors about the incident with the little girl on the gravel road. She said it sounded ugly, and that people were starting to talk. She planted a seed of doubt. "I'd be careful if I were you," she said, her tone confidential. "Tyler Lawson has a habit of letting his friends take the fall for him." It was the perfect play. It leveraged Michael's insecurity and his fear of getting in trouble. Sarah told him that if he had proof that Tyler was the ringleader, he should save it just in case. She didn't ask him to share it. She just armed him with the idea of self-preservation. We waited. For 2 days there was nothing. I started to think it hadn't worked. Maybe Michael was more loyal to Tyler than we thought. I was sitting at the kitchen table on the 3rd night going through another batch of useless HOA violation notices, when Sam's phone buzzed. It was a message from Claire. It just said, "Check your email." Now, Sam opened her laptop. In her inbox was an email from an anonymous encrypted address. There were no words, just a series of attachments. Michael exported the thread from his own account. Dozens of screenshots, metadata, and timestamps intact. It was the entire conversation from the dugout group chat. Starting from the afternoon, Lily was hurt. It was worse and better than we could have imagined. It was a fire hose of digital poison. A raw, unfiltered look into the minds of these boys. And it was our smoking gun. Tyler had bragged extensively. That little girl went down so fast. One of his messages read, "Like a sack of potatoes." Another boy asked if he was worried about getting in trouble. Tyler's reply was pure distilled arrogance. "No way, my mom handled it. She owns the principal and she's making that family's life hell with the HOA LOL. They'll be gone in a month." He went on describing the incident in detail. He admitted to nudging Lily with the bat. He laughed about how scared she looked. He named every boy who was there. He implicated himself, his friends, and his mother in one magnificent self-incriminating monologue. He had confessed to the assault, the cover-up, and the subsequent campaign of harassment. It was all there in black and white with timestamps. I felt a wave of cold, clean anger wash over me, the kind that clarifies things. This wasn't just about a kid being a bully anymore. This was a calculated, malicious attack, orchestrated and protected by his mother. Sam was silent, her eyes scanning the text, her expression unreadable. She scrolled through all the images, her methodical mind absorbing every detail. She downloaded them, backed them up to 3 separate secure drives, and then printed hard copies. We had it, the confession. Cold, hard digital text delivered by the perpetrator himself. It was more than enough to reopen the case at the school. It was enough to take to the police and demand they file charges against Tyler for assault. It was the victory we had been working for. But Sam wasn't looking at Tyler's messages anymore. She had zoomed in on one of the screenshots, her finger resting on the screen. She was looking at the list of participants in the group chat. She pointed to a different name, one we hadn't focused on before. It was George, the son of the HOA treasurer. This, she said, her voice quiet and certain, is more than just a confession. This is leverage. This is shall we get his mother. The name on the screen was George Peterson Jr. His father, George Sr., was the HOA treasurer. He was a quiet man, an accountant by trade. I'd see him at the annual meetings, sitting silently next to Karen, looking overwhelmed as she railroaded her agenda through. He always struck me as a man who was in over his head, a follower, not a leader. His son being part of Tyler's crew was the link we never knew we needed. Our strategy shifted. Nailing Tyler for assault was still on the table, but it was now secondary. The real target was Karen and the corrupt enterprise she was running. George Sr. was the weak point in her inner circle. He was the gatekeeper to the one thing that could expose her completely, the financial records. We decided on a direct approach. No more cutouts, no more whispers. Sam and I would go to George Peterson's house. We wouldn't go with threats. We would go with a choice. It was a risky move. If he was loyal to Karen, he could warn her, and she could start destroying evidence. But Sam's gut told her he was a man trapped, not a willing co-conspirator. We had to bet on that. We went on a Saturday morning. Webb brought a file with us, a very thin file. Inside were just 2 pieces of paper. The first was a printed screenshot of the group chat where Tyler confessed with George Jr.'s name clearly visible as a participant. The second was a draft of a police report for the assault on Lily listing all 4 boys, including George Jr. as involved parties. George answered the door himself. He looked surprised to see us. He was a small, neat man with glasses and an air of perpetual anxiety. "Mark, Sam," he said, confused. "Can I help you?" "We need a few minutes of your time, George," Sam said, her tone polite but firm. "It's important. It's about our daughter and your son." The color drained from his face. He ushered us inside into a living room that was as meticulously tidy as he was. He sat on the edge of his armchair, perched like a nervous bird. We didn't sit. Sam placed the folder on the coffee table in front of him. "We know what happened to our daughter Lily," I began. "We know who was there, and now we have proof of what was said afterwards." George opened the folder. He read the screenshot of the group chat. His hand trembled slightly. He saw his son's name. He saw Tyler Lawson bragging about his mother handling it. He saw the casual cruelty, the utter lack of remorse. Then he saw the draft of the police report. He saw his son's name again, this time on an official document that could change the course of his life. He looked up at us, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and despair. "My son, he's a good boy," he stammered. He gets caught up with the wrong crowd." "Tyler is very persuasive," Sam finished for him. "We know, and we know Karen is even more persuasive." She paused, letting the silence hang in the room. "We don't want to ruin your son's life, George. He made a mistake, a bad one. But he's not the one who orchestrated this. Tyler is. And Karen is the one who covered it up and then declared war on my family." I picked up where she left off. "We have a choice for you, George. Option A, we file this police report. We give these screenshots to the school and to the authorities. Your son gets expelled. He gets a criminal record, and he's tied to the Lawsons forever. Option B, you help us stop Karen. You help us fix the mess she's made of this community. Your son agrees to make a formal statement about what really happened that day. And in return, we focus all our attention on the person who is truly responsible." It was a stark choice. His son's future versus his loyalty to a woman who was clearly using him. We watched him wrestle with it. We could see the years of frustration with Karen, the silent complicity, wearing with his fear. "What she does, it isn't right." He finally whispered more to himself than to us. "The way she moves money around, the special assessments for emergency repairs that never happen. The contracts," his voice trailed off. "What about the contracts?" George Sam asked quietly. "The landscaping company. It's her brother-in-law. The paving company that resurfaced the tennis courts. It's her cousins. The bids are fake. She controls everything. She skims from every project." He looked down at his hands. "I see it all. I sign the checks because she tells me to. She says it's how things are done." "Not anymore," I said. "You can stop it right now." He wasn't for a full minute. The only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway. Finally, he looked up and something in his eyes had changed. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by a flicker of resolve. He'd made his decision. "Wait here," he said. He got up and left the room. He came back a few minutes later carrying Aslam black laptop and a flash drive. He placed them on the coffee table next to our folder. I called my attorney. Cooperation for immunity is on the table, he said. This is my personal copy of the real ledger, he said, his voice shaking but clear. Not the doctored one she presents at the meetings. This has everything. The invoices, the transfers to her personal accounts disguised as consulting fees, the kickbacks. It's all there for the last 5 years. Sam picked up the flash drive. She looked at George. You're doing the right thing, she said. I hope so, he replied, slumping back into his chair as if the weight of the world had just been lifted from his shoulders and then dropped right back on them. We left this house with the Holy Grail. The ledgers were a thing of beauty, a meticulously detailed roadmap of Karen Lawson's greed. We had her son for assault. We had her for a campaign of harassment. And now, thanks to the quiet accountant down the street, we had her for multiple state and federal felonies. These transfers crossed state lines, the detective said. Classic wire fraud. The annual HOA meeting was in 2 days. It was time to call in the cavalry. The 2 days leading up to the HOA meeting were a blur of controlled, focused activity. Sam and I didn't sleep much. We were fueled by coffee and adrenaline. Our house became the command center for the final phase of our operation. Sam took the flash drive from George and dove into the numbers. My job was to prepare the presentation. Bill and Claire were our liaison, quietly spreading the word to the other families Karen had terrorized. Come to the meeting. You'll want to see this. Sam's analysis of the financial records was brutal and efficient. She uncovered everything. Payments for a community garden revitalization that never happened. Inflated invoices from the landscaping company with direct kickbacks funneled into a slush fund controlled by Karen. She found evidence of Karen using the HOA's credit card for personal expenses, spa days, designer clothes, even a family vacation to the Caribbean. All buried under vague expense codes like board development and community outreach. The total amount she had embezzled over 5 years was well into 6 figures. It was staggering. While Sam built the financial case, I built the narrative. I created a PowerPoint presentation. It sounds lame, I know, a PowerPoint to take down a dictator, but it was the perfect weapon for this battlefield. It was calm, corporate, and undeniable. I started with the incident with Lily using stills from our security cameras. Then I moved to the harassment, showing side-by-side comparisons of the bogus violation notices and our own dated photographic proof of compliance. Then came the big guns. Tyler's confession from the group chat, blown up on a full slide, his words hanging in the air for all to see. The grand finale was Sam's financial analysis presented in a series of simple, devastating charts and graphs that showed exactly where the money went. The day before the meeting, Sam made a phone call. She didn't call the local police. She called a contact she had from her time in the service, someone who was now a detective in the white-collar crime division of the state police. She laid out the case for him calmly and methodically. She sent him the entire file encrypted, the evidence of assault, conspiracy, harassment, and now major financial fraud. He was silent for a long time on the other end of the line. Then he said, "I'll be there with warrants." After looping the DA, a judge signed that afternoon. The night of the meeting, the community center was packed. Usually, these meetings were sparsely attended, just Karen, her board cronies, and a few lonely gadflies. Tonight, the room was standing room only. Bill, Claire, and the other families we'd spoken to were there. George Peterson was there, looking pale but resolute. Word had gotten out that something big was happening. Karen was at the podium, beaming. She saw the large crowd as a sign of her own popularity, a testament to her leadership. She was wearing a crisp white blazer, looking every bit the untouchable queen of her domain. She started the meeting with her usual condescending pattering on about property values and the importance of adhering to aesthetic covenants. She had no idea she was delivering her own eulogy. We let her go through the agenda, the minutes from the last meeting, the treasurer's report, where George read from the fake sanitized ledger, his voice barely a whisper. Then came the time for new business. The final item on the agenda was open forum for homeowner comments. "Does anyone have anything they'd like to bring before the board?" Karen asked, a saccharine smile plastered on her face. Sam stood up. A hush fell over the room. Every eye was on her. She walked to the front of the room where we had set up a projector and a laptop. "I do," she said, her voice clear and steady. Karen's smile faltered. "The floor is yours, Sam," she said, her tone suddenly laced with ice. Sam didn't look at her. She addressed the room, her fellow homeowners. "For the past several weeks," she began, "my family has been the target of a campaign of harassment by this board's president." She clicked the first slide. A picture of Lily's scraped face appeared on the screen. A collective gasp went through the room. One by one, she walked them through the evidence, the fines, the doctored photos, the late-night visit from the thugs. Tyler's confession filled the screen, and a low murmur of outrage spread through the crowd. Karen was on her feet now, her face a mask of fury. "This is slander." "This meeting is adjourned," she shrieked, banging her gavel. "Not so fast, Mrs. Lawson," a calm voice said from the back of the room. 2 men in suits and 3 uniformed state troopers had entered silently. They stood by the doors. The lead detective walked down the center aisle. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of felony fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." Panic erupted. Karen stared at the detective, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Her son, Tyler, who was sitting in the front row, tried to make a run for it. One of the troopers intercepted him easily. "We have a warrant for you too, son," the detective said, not even looking at him. "For assault?" They cuffed Tyler first. Then the detective approached the podium. He read Karen her rights as she sputtered, protested, and threatened lawsuits. The entire room wassailed, watching the Queen's castle crumble into dust. They put her in handcuffs. The sound of the metal ratcheting shut was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. As they led her away, a sputtering, disbelieving mess, her eyes met mine. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in them. The kind of fear she had tried to instill in us and all her neighbors. It was a deeply, profoundly satisfying moment. But watching them lead her away in handcuffs, past the silent faces of the community she had bullied for so long, wasn't the real victory. The real victory wasn't about revenge. It was about what came next. About rebuilding the trust she had so thoroughly shattered. The aftermath of the HOA meeting felt like the silence after a storm. Air clear, pressure gone. News of Karen and Tyler's arrests ran through the neighborhood like brush fire. For a few days, our place became a waypoint. Neighbors we'd barely met stopping by to thank us and to share their own run-ins with Karen's petty rule book. Turns out we weren't her only targets. We were just the first to fight back with stubborn receipts. An emergency meeting dissolved the old board. Bill, the retired Marine next door, got tapped as interim president. He sighed like he'd been recalled to duty, just till it sorted. But everyone knew he was right for it. Claire, the teacher, became secretary. George Peterson, granted immunity for cooperating, stayed on as treasurer, handed the job of untying the knots Karen tied in the books and chasing the stolen funds. For the first time in years, the HOA felt owned by the people paying the dues. The legal gears turned. Faced with his own messages and George Jr.'s statement, Tyler pleaded to a lesser assault. Community service, anger management, a mark that would follow every application. Karen's case was heavier. State investigators mapped the fraud end to end. She faced years. The Lawsons sold fast and vanished before trial. Their perfect white SUV becoming a neighborhood ghost story. Life settled into a better normal. Lily played on the gravel road again, her laugh back to baseline. Fear eased out of the house like steam. Sam took down most of her surveillance web, keeping the doorbell cam. "Good fences make good neighbors," she said, and for once, it sounded less like a warning and more like a plan. Our small resistance disbanded with honors. Under Bill, the silly fines stopped. The bylaws got trimmed to human size. People started talking on sidewalks again. No one worried a garden gnome would trigger a certified letter. The place felt lighter. A few months later, a plain envelope arrived. The new board had tallied the damage and cut us a check. The bogus fines Karen hammered us with. Not a fortune, but the point was the point. Accountability you could deposit. I stared at the check and knew exactly what to do. Next morning, I booked the most ridiculous high-end lawn service in the county. Not a mower, an experience. A crew rolled up with laser levels and tools that looked borrowed from a moon landing. They aerated, seeded, fertilized, then mowed every blade to Oniform 2.9 in. HOA Covenant 4.7 executed like a parade. It was absurdly beautiful. Malicious compliance is landscape art. I snapped a crisp photo of that green runway and another of the itemized invoice. Then I emailed both to the new board with a simple note. "For your records, regards." Mark Bill called an hour later, laughing so hard he wheezed. Petty, absolutely sarcastic, completely necessary. Not even a little. Perfect. Yes. We didn't just win. We took back our home, our peace, our block. We learned how far you go to protect your own all the way. And when it's over, you keep the lawn at 2.9 in. Not because Karen says so, but because you chose